Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're just letting everybody in. Hello. Nice to see everyone. We have a huge group of people here today, so we're just going to give everybody a minute or two to get connected. Lots of familiar faces today. So what we're hoping is that as we get everybody connected, well, folks can leave their camera on for now if you'd like, but we're going to ask everybody to put their camera off when we get started. Okay, I think I'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Wendy Porch. I'm the Executive Director at the Center for Independent Living in Toronto, also known as CILT. I use she and her pronouns. I am a white, cisgendered, disabled woman. I have long, dark hair. I have black glasses on, and I have a leopard print dress on today. And usually I wear red lipstick, frankly, so there you go. I'm very happy to welcome everybody here today for a celebration of the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. And today we're going to be talking about this topic through the lens of history and through the lens of looking at the power of community action. Today we will have the great pleasure of hearing from a number of community members about the work that they are doing. We're going to hear from Lisa Arneson, who is the founder and chair of Ashe Community Foundation for Black Canadians with Disabilities, and owner and principal of Arneson Consulting. We'll also hear from Ann Borden, Autistics for Autistics and host of the podcast Non-Compliant. Hi, Ann, nice to see you. And I think, hi, Lisa, nice to see you. We'll also hear from Rabia Hudder from Disability Without Poverty and Race and Disability Canada. And we'll hear from our own folks at CILT on behalf of the GTA Disability Coalition. I'd like to first get started by handing over to CILT's own Robin Simmons, who will welcome us with a land acknowledgement. Could we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. And take it away, Robin.
Thank you, Wendy. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are all joining virtually. So we may be on different treaty lands, but CILT is located in Toronto, which is a territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations. Yes, sorry. So of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations and the Anastavic and the Chippewa and the Haudenosaunee and the Wendat peoples. Okay, yeah. So Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations and the Anastavic and the Chippewa and the Haudenosaunee and the Wendat. Yep. We recognize the impact of the historical and ongoing practices of colonization, and those of us who are settlers are grateful for the opportunity to live, play, and work on this land. We thank and honor and stand in solidarity with generations of Indigenous people. We recognize the need to advance change and create more equitable and just and inclusive Ontario for all, especially those who experience multiple intersecting forms of oppression, like disabled, indigenous, Black, and people of color. This land is also part of the dish with one spoon, wampum belt, the dish with one spoon in territory, a treaty between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Ana- Anastasia and sorry for the mispronunciation of that, and allied nations to peaceably share and care for this land. All those who come and live and work here are responsible for honoring this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. Miigwech. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. I really appreciate you speaking on behalf of Silk today. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Could we have the next slide, please? Brilliant. So I want to just take the opportunity to talk a little bit about SILT. SILT is rooted in the Nothing About Us Without Us disability rights movement as a community-based resource center by and for disabled people. We work towards building a society where people with disabilities have social and economic equity. At all times, must have a board that is composed of a majority of disabled people. This is in our bylaws. We also must always have a board president and vice president who are disabled people. These are values that are very important to us. Later today, you'll be hearing more about the Sustainable Development Goals, or also known as SDGs. These are goals developed by the UN with the intention of providing a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet now and into the future. The SDGs recognize that for us to be able to achieve an ideal future, we must address the inherent inequities faced by some communities, including inequitable access to food and an adequate income, the lack of access to supports and services related to good health, and a lack of access to safe, accessible, and deeply affordable housing and transit. SILT's commitment to the independent living movement and social and economic equity for disabled people means that the heart of the SDGs overlaps significantly with the work that we do. Some of the programs that we have at SILT include our information and referral program. We have a volunteer program, peer support and parenting with the Disability Network, independent living skills training, the Attendant Service Application Center, which is a centralized point for people in the GTA to apply for attendance services. We also act as administrators for the direct funding program, the IDE plus A project, which is training for nonprofits in understanding and being inclusive of disabled people, as well as the GTA Disability Coalition. Today, we're going to hear from our community partners about their work towards realizing gains on 4 significant and important sustainable development goals. These include no poverty, reduced inequities, good health and well-being, sustainable cities and communities. By coming together as a community of disabled people, we can support each other's work and move us closer to the ideals of social and economic equity for disabled people everywhere. And thank you for being here to celebrate our work as disabled people together. I'd like to just say we're grateful to all of our members. We're grateful to all of you to be here today, for being here today, and also to all of the speakers that are here today. We're also grateful to our funders, which include the City of Toronto, the United Way of Greater Toronto, and the Ministry of Health for supporting this work. So welcome, everyone. I'd like to now pass you over to SILT's John Massa for a review of the session guidelines, the agenda, the UN SDG overview, and then he's going to pass along to our presenters.
Thank you, Wendy. Next slide. So my name is John Massa. I use the pronouns he and him. I am a white cisgender male with a physical disability. To describe myself, I have short black hair and a mustache, and I'm wearing a blue t-shirt. The session guidelines today, we have access supports. Our ASL English interpreters are Kimberly and Sharon. And we have a CART captionist, and his name is Max. This celebration is meant to empower you with the International Day of Persons with Disabilities history and community action, information, and resources. For privacy and time management, we ask that everyone be muted and no video except for the host until the question and answer section. We will be recording the Zoom webinar, but we'll stop the recording at the questions and answer section. During the Q&A, please type in your question to SILT, and we will share it on your behalf. Or if you need to be unmuted, please raise your hand. If you need additional support, please select Robin Simmons, SILT staff, in the chat box, and she will assist you. And finally, we want to co-create a space that everyone will feel heard and respected. We are committed to ensure a safe space for all. Next slide. Yeah. So an agenda for today, we had Wendy give us our welcome, our executive director at SILT. I will give a brief history of the United Nations International Day of Persons with Disabilities. I will then talk about the United Nations International Day of People with Disabilities theme for 2023, and a brief overview of the Sustainable Development Goals, or referred to as SDGs. Then we will have community action project speakers, questions and answers, and then finally wrap up and thank yous. Next slide. So just a very brief history. December 3rd is actually the annual observance of the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, which was proclaimed in 1992 by the United Nations General Assembly under Resolution 47/3. But we're celebrating it on December 4th today. And the observance of this day aims to promote an understanding of disability issues and mobilize the support for dignity, rights, and well-being of persons with disabilities. Next slide. So this year's theme for the International Day is, quote, "United in action to rescue and achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, for, with, and by persons with disabilities." And they have an agenda that hope to achieve these goals by 2023. And it holds deep promises for people with disabilities everywhere. And the year 2016 marked the first year of trying to implement these sustainable development goals. And we're at a critical point because we only have about 14 years left for us to be committed to work to promote the mainstreaming of disability and the implementation of the SDGs through its 15-year lifespan with objectives. Next slide. So there are 17 goals, 17 sustainable development goals, but we will be covering 4 central goals that are highly relevant to disability equity. Goal 1 is no poverty. Goal 3 is good health and well-being. Goal 10 is reducing inequities. Goal 11 is sustainable cities and communities. And to learn more about all the SDGs, we have a website that is there and will be part of our resources that we send out to everyone, as well as this presentation. Next slide. So I'm going to briefly give one objective for each of the goals. And I know that our speakers will be addressing these goals more specifically to their community action programs. So goal 1, no poverty. It's hoped by 2023 that we reduce at least by half the proportion of men, women, and children of all ages living in poverty in all of its dimensions, according to national definitions. There are many other objectives here, but this is a key one that I put. So goal 3 is good health and well-being. By 2023, achieve universal health coverage, including financial risk protection, access to quality essential healthcare services, and access to safe, effective, quality, and affordable essential medicines and vaccines for all. Next slide. Goal 10, reduce inequalities. By 2023, empower and promote the social, economic, and political inclusion of all, irrespective of age, sex, disability, race, ethnicity, origin, religion, or economic or other status. Goal 11, sustainable cities and communities. By 2023, ensure access for all to adequate, safe, and affordable housing and basic services and upgrade slums. The other important objective is by 2023 to provide access to safe, affordable, accessible, and sustainable transport systems for all, improving road safety, notably by expanding public transit, transport with special attention to the needs of those in vulnerable situations, women, children, persons with disabilities, and older persons. Next slide. So I would like to now pass it to our panel. What I will be doing is reading a brief bio for each speaker as they go. They will have about 10 minutes to speak. And 1 minute prior, I'll give a verbal heads up that they're at the end of their 10 minutes, their 10-minute presentation. So I'd like to begin by introducing Liza Arneson. Did I pronounce that right? Holds a BA and MA in Sociology and Equity Studies and Education at Boise, is the owner and principal of Arneson Consulting, chair of the U Calgary Alumni Network, and founder and chair of Ashe Community Foundation for Black Canadians with Disabilities. Above all, Liza is a mom, grandma, and mentor, and Liza's commitment to the principles of nothing without us and for us, by us, has always been the cornerstone of her work as an educator, administrator, and community advocate. So I ask that Rayhan stop sharing, and then Lisa to share your PowerPoint. Is that okay?
Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me and see my PowerPoint?
Yes, hi, Lisa.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. The name is Lisa, but you know what? You called me my nickname, which I've adapted to, Liza, which is my nickname. If you see other things and you're confused, I go by Liz as well. So thank you for that introduction, and it's quite personal, so thank you. So I have my 10 minutes, and there's a mistake there, but it's Black disability and gender, resisting oppression, poverty, and violence. I always start, or I would like to start, when we talk about resistance and we talk about reducing poverty and we talk about this word called disability justice, one thing I always want people to remember, we've been resisting for centuries. Indigenous people have been resisting. We've been talking about intersectionality. We have been disabled and we have been owned. I've been beaten, and yet we still resist. So the people in this picture is just a reminder of how long and how far this struggle has been for people in my community. The lady in all white sitting, that's Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman was a disabled Black woman, an enslaved woman that ran to safety and then went back into slavery many times through the Underground Railroad and brought out many of her family and others. You'll see on the other side a black and white picture of Soldier Truth. Way back when, as a former slave herself, speaking, ain't I a woman? Meaning we're talking about intersectionality of being left out in different spaces. So, and the picture in the middle there you'll see is my mother, who has had disabilities her whole life, and myself, who's also a woman with disabilities. And so the idea behind it is, how come I can't? Is keep this in mind as we think about this work that we're doing, the commitment to the work, that we stand on other people's shoulders, and it's very important. This is who we are at Ashe, and basically we're rooted in the For Us Bias principle, which centers our voices of Black disabled people, lived experience, and boundless talents. So I saw a lot about disability justice, so I decided to spend some of my time talking about it. Everybody's heard of disability justice when it comes to what Kim Crenshaw has said, as coined that term. But intersectionality came long before, as if I showed you in the pictures. And Audre Lorde, which is one of the people in the picture, spoke about it in the 60s, about the single issue. We're not single, we don't experience single issues. So I wanted to point out that now that we're talking about it, finally, there's open room from all the work that everybody's been doing, including the UN. Intersectionality is one of 10 points. The others are recognizing the wholeness of the person, sustainability within the movement, leadership of the most impacted. And put this one in white because some people forget that we're really focusing on those that aren't in the room, those are being left behind, those that have the biggest consequences for that left behind. There is cross-disability solidarity, which is exactly what this is. Interdependency, exactly what is happening in this panel. Collective access, exactly again, is what we're doing here. But did you also know that disability justice is collective liberation? So for one to be liberated and free from this discrimination, harassment, and violence, we all races, all levels of oppression need to be eliminated at the same time. And it is a capitalist politic. So it does look at the value that capitalism looks at the value of a disabled person, and then you start to look at the intersectionality and the history of certain populations like Black and Indigenous that were colonized. So let's talk about poverty. We know that Black disabled women who are sole support parents have the highest rate of poverty. We know this through the capacity building research project we worked on, a conference We did a presentation at Disability and Education Conference where we were looking at our youth project that we're doing on neurodiverse and the high unemployment in that area. We wrote a paper on prioritizing Black Canadians with disabilities in Bill C-22, and we have a witness, and Rabia is going to speak to that. Witness to the Senate standing, which we did, and we write position papers. So good health and well-being. Well, for us, the cycle of oppression means we have limited access to the social determinants of health. So our research papers that we're working on, we're creating knowledge in an area where there is no knowledge, at the intersection of Black race and Black disability and gender. So we worked with Realize on our section, which was Black people, episodic disabilities and employment. We are writing papers now on the disability and reproductive health during COVID-19 in Canada, specifically Black women and gender diverse people research. So look out for these papers. They're coming. The first paper is called Crisis in a Crisis, Experience of Black Women and Gender Diverse People. Respect. So I'm a part of the research examining the stories of pregnancy and childbearing in Canada today. So I've been a part of this now for 2 years, and now we're moving into the analyzing stage. So we're a part of one group and another group, which is about immigrants and refugees. And then we do a real knowledge series where we try to gather information from people, experiences, and at the same time we share, and at the same time we educate. Building sustainable cities and communities. Well, we have this new thing called the Black Accessibility Hub. So any resource in general, we put in there, or links to resources we're more interested in. If you have a service that works culturally responsive to Black people at the intersection of disability, we'd like you to submit for free, and it's free to search. And we have a repository or a catalog of research and policy at the intersection of Black and disability. It doesn't mean that it has to be, that you have to be published. It just means that there's many works coming out of students right now. We have a National Disability Coalition that we've been working on and hoping to do a good launch, a new launch. The Black Youth Coalition has been operating for 1.5 years. We're starting up a critical Black Disability Research Council based on critical Black disability feminist framework, and an Ashay Black Entrepreneurship Network. We do hand-enrolled town halls, and we're working towards a poverty reduction strategy for Black disabled Canadians. And we're happy for anybody that wants to join this group. And capacity building research project. So we listed to the government an engagement strategy of how you should and would need to work with Black and racialized organizations who are doing this work, and most of them themselves being those people. So as I wrap up, let's take a look at what does that mean for all of us? What does this mean? How do we collectively challenge and eradicate these historical and invisible systemic structures using a disability justice framework? Because in it, it's for us, by us, meaning you have to have Black disabled people at those spaces. And not just people, you have to have people that are comfortable to speak up and advocate. So I love Audre Lorde, and if you haven't read her, please do. The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. They will never enable us to bring about genuine change. That was a speech at a women's conference where she was the only Black woman. And she changed her speech and said this, but you can read it as a little book. Please take the time to do this. This is what we're doing this week. We have a very interesting event coming up. It's not Saturday, I forgot to change it, it's Thursday, but I can put the link in the chat. And then we're also recruiting, if you're in Hamilton, Black youth who are diverse learners, families, caregivers, siblings, educational and community stakeholders to be a part of our project. That's the Black Hub, and this is some of our team. We're very proud. I'm very proud of the team, and I had to say a special thank you. Wrote down the name, but can't remember the person who did the land acknowledgement. I'll have to tell you, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and we particularly appreciate being called and listed as Black, because Black and racialized and Black and people of color, we need to separate it because our context is different because of enslavement. And so I want to tell you thank you. And I want to also acknowledge our Black ancestors and those enslaved who survived and resisted for centuries in this country as well. Many of us helped and supported and lived within Indigenous communities. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Really appreciate the presentation. I look forward to you being part of the panel for the Q&A. Thank you so much. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Anne Borden-King. She is a co-founder of Autistics for Autistics, a Canadian autistic self-advocacy organization. She has presented before the United Nations and the Canadian Senate and is the director of Autistics Health Access Project and is also the host of Non-Compliant, a popular podcast about neurodiversity. Her writing has appeared in the New York Times, Healthy Debate, and the Thinking Person's Guide to Autism, among other publications. So I will pass it to Anne, and she could share her presentation. I ask that you speak slowly and clearly for the interpreters, and you have about 10 minutes, and I'll let you know 1 minute before. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's really, really great to be here, an honor to be with everyone. I just want to echo what Lisa was saying, and I love that Audre Lorde was mentioned as part of it, and everyone should read her work. She was ahead of her time, or maybe we're behind her time. I'm not sure, but Audre Lorde is such an important part of disability justice. And that idea of cross-disability solidarity that Lisa was talking about, I think is also really, really important. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about that today. I really appreciate that Center for Independent Living Toronto is including neurodivergent people in its vision of disability rights. It's an incredibly valuable thing to do. And without further ado, I'm going to share the screen and do a short presentation about one of our, I don't know if I can share the screen. One participant can share at a time. Okay, it's not letting me share the screen. Can somebody run my slides? I'm so sorry.
Rehan, are you able to pull up Anne's slides? Or
Sorry,
Lisa?
I don't know why, but I have permission. I let you share. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Let me try again. Yeah, it's giving me prompts that says one person can share at a time. Multiple participants can share simultaneously, but it's not letting me actually share. Oh, here we go. I've got it now. Okay. All right, here I am with my presentation, and I hope everyone can see it. The Autistic Health Access Project is an autistic-led project that's working towards meeting the SDGs in Canada. And the reason that we are a very small organization with a very small budget and grassroots, like many disability organizations, we focus on micro efforts in our work because we see that we get immediate results from these small efforts. And eventually, if you have enough of these micro movements and efforts, you get real transformation. And that's kind of what the neurodiversity movement is all about. You talked earlier about the United Nations Strategic Development Goals, but this is kind of a summary of them. As mentioned, they were adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015, and that includes Canada. So goal 3 is to ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. And I think everybody here knows that there's a long way for Canada to go before that actually happens. A little background into our project, where we're trying to help work towards those goals, as our government hopefully does too. We were founded in 2017 and we're Canada's only autistic-led advocacy group. Our leadership is all autistic. We do education, community building, and advocacy locally and internationally on inclusion in housing, education, employment, and healthcare. In 2018, we identified barriers to healthcare for autistic people, and so we launched the Canadian-based initiative, the Autistic Health Access Project. Our goal is to educate healthcare providers to help remove barriers for autistic people who are non-speaking and autistic people who have intellectual disabilities and any autistic people who are facing barriers to their healthcare. We had some findings quite early on from speaking with our members across Canada that many autistic people do not have access to basic health care, such as a family doctor, and not just because of the shortage of family doctors. We also have barriers to mental health services. Mental health workers really tend not to understand the unique perspectives of autistic people. So even if we can get someone, they don't always understand. They often don't understand. And dental care, because of past trauma that autistic people have faced as children, with dental care and the sensory issues and the treatment of children in dental care. Many people do not have access to dental care. They're afraid. And also most of us live in poverty and we can't afford it. The last area of access that's really limited for autistic people is emergency care, such as the ER, due to the massive sensory issues of being in an emergency room, due to communication issues in the emergency room for people who use AAC devices to communicate, and for people with intellectual disabilities who are misinterpreted and don't have the service they need. As I mentioned, there's a communication barrier. Often people who do not speak and people who are intellectually disabled have trouble communicating with people in healthcare because people in healthcare are not trained to speak with us, as well as autistic methods of speaking and moving, which can be misinterpreted. We've seen them be misinterpreted by police and people be attacked just for flapping. And it also happens in emergency rooms where people get treated poorly. There's also the importance of the trauma-informed perspective, which is lacking in most Canadian healthcare and is very necessary because anybody may have experienced trauma. It helps all patients, but autistic people process trauma in a specific way and often have trauma and that needs to be understood. So that's what we're kind of trying to teach. There are also barriers, of course, beyond the clinic. Poverty is a huge barrier for most autistic people in Canada live in poverty. So they don't have coverage for many forms of care. The greater needs that come out of poverty are the fact that when someone is in poverty, they're more likely to experience suicidal thoughts and mental health crises that are directly related to both poverty and trauma and intergenerational trauma, particularly for autistic people of color. The second barrier beyond the clinic, of course, is that trauma, including trauma from past medical experiences, which leads autistic people who are extremely skilled at avoiding things. It's a superpower. Unfortunately, when you avoid going to the doctor and the dentist, you can end up with cancer and abscesses. And it's very important to get to the doctor. However, of course, it's very difficult when there's not access, particularly if you're not speaking or if you have an intellectual disability. Our response to that was, of course, we're continuing our anti-poverty work that never stops. And we're providing an online space for our members to help share resources and information to help each other get access to care. But the big part of this project, the Autistic Health Access Project, is to educate health providers and medical students. We are teaching them how to communicate with people who are non-speaking that use AAC devices. We're teaching them how to understand and respond to autistic communication, movement, and sensory input responses, to not misinterpret that. And then we're also providing basic information on trauma-informed care, which is helpful to all patients. Health providers need this information and they need to be empowered. Most medical schools do not have units on how to communicate with an AAC user, someone who is non-speaking. They don't know how to talk to our members when they show up. Nobody at the clinic or ER knows how to deal with someone, or not deal with, but how to be appropriate with someone who's using an AAC device. And sometimes they even take the devices away, particularly during COVID. There's also a problem with parents speaking for patients. Many people need to bring their parents along to an appointment. However, if the doctor will turn and pivot to the parent and just talk to the parent and not to the patient, this is not only hurts people's feelings, it also means they don't really have access because there are things that they might want to talk about that their parents aren't talking about. They have their own unique interpretation and everybody deserves to be heard. But continually we hear from people that the doctor talks to their parent instead of them. Providers also sometimes have tunnel vision. They get so focused on the autism diagnosis that they forget, well, actually I'm here because I'm having a problem with my heel, or whatever. Can you test me for cancer, please? And autism has nothing to do with this. That can also be a problem. So our experience of presenting to medical students was quite interesting because the first group to accept us as presenters was an autism services organization.
Oh, and you just went on mute. Okay.
Am I unmuted? The first school we presented at, we were actually invited by an autism services organization, and we were to present in the second hour of their presentation. And the person organizing it told us, well, don't feel bad if the medical students don't seem interested. They might pack up their bags before you're done. But we knew that wouldn't happen. And it wasn't the case. They were really excited to see our presentation, and they lined up to meet us afterwards because they want to help their patients, but there's no other training provided to them besides this little 1 hour that we provide. And of course, we've been invited back year after year. Our experience, of course, is my co-presenter, Darla Burrow, who is an AAC user. Darla types in, and then the voice comes out. This has been a really great praxis because she's presenting about AAC and she uses AAC, and everyone who asks her questions learns right on the spot to wait for someone to finish typing before they can go on. That's really important because a lot of times people that use AAC, they get talked over by people who don't wait for them to type or point. So it's been kind of a nice example of that. AAC, this is just a quick slide of something that we would present. And I know I'm running out of time, but you can see on this slide, we explain very clearly to the practitioners and students what AAC is. We explain the basics of communicating with an AAC user. And then we talk a little bit about how things are being done in some other places, such as in the UK, which is more inclusive. They have real staff training, which we don't have here in Canada. It shouldn't be a little grassroots group showing up for the second hour of a presentation at 8 o'clock at night, and that's their autism training. We'd like to see this really integrated into medical schools and clinics so that everybody gets the training that they need. But once again, we're starting out with these little micro efforts, hoping that it can snowball into something larger. There is no government commitment to autism inclusive healthcare, although there is, like I said, in the UK. Canadian government does not meaningfully consult with our organizations or individuals, and they pretty much have been ignoring our insights and our projects, which is really unfortunate. Our grassroots programs should be a model for a new approach by the Government of Canada, and we'll continue to advocate for that. The future of meeting the SDGs is that Canada and its provinces and territories are not even close to meeting them, as we all know. Policymakers, in our view, need to directly engage with individuals, such as people who are non-speaking, intellectually disabled, and autistic. And we're here and we're just waiting. We've created the model programs, and I hope that in future years, we'll be presenting on a much broader use of the program nationally, and hopefully with some collaboration from our government and a recognition of its importance. And here is our contact information. If anyone wants to learn more about the program, have your doctor or hospital engage in the program. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anne. I ask that you, thank you for stop sharing. Thank you very much, Anne. Look forward to the Q&A on the panel. Thank you. I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Rabia Haidar is the National Director, English Canada, of Disability Without Poverty, founder of Race and Disability Canada, CEO of DEEN Support Services, a disability support organization created by Muslim Canadians that supports people in Ontario, and a consultant with Diversity Works, a company that trains organizations in cultural competency and accessibility. Rabia has previously served as Commissioner of the Ontario Human Rights Commission, and I will unmute you, Rabia, and Sorry. Last time mute. Start video.
All right. Hello, good morning, good afternoon. Here I am.
Hi, Rabia.
All right, are we good?
Yes.
Awesome. So thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you for the opportunity to come and speak. Today, December 4th, the day after the International Day of Disabled People internationally, we have been gathering and having so many conversations leading up to this December 3rd commemoration and post commemoration. We continue to focus and spotlight the experiences of people with disabilities and the challenges and opportunities that remain. So my name is Rabia Khudr. I am as I like to identify myself, a hyphen with many hijabs. I am a Muslim, Punjabi, Pakistani, Canadian woman, wife, mother, daughter of aging parents, sister to individuals with the disabilities. I am an advocate, an activist, a facilitator, an organizer, a mobilizer, a systems disruptor, a social entrepreneur, yada, yada, yada. And I happen to have a disability. I am blind. And I grew up with siblings with intellectual disabilities and vision loss. So this is my context. This is my lived reality, my lived experience that I bring to any space that I function in, that I communicate in, that I negotiate in, that I navigate, and that I advocate in. And this is the lived experience that I bring to the work that I do as National Director at Disability Without Poverty. Disability Without Poverty having a laser focus on the Canada Disability Benefit. So Canada is a signatory on the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. We've made tremendous legislative progress since 75 years ago. So this week we're also marking the 75th anniversary on December 10th of the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. People with disabilities in this country were excluded in many ways, and I will not dwell on that history because most of you know it well. And the independent living movement is no stranger to that. In fact, the independent living movement brought us forward in so many ways to where we are today. And because I'm speaking in CILT's space, Center for Independent Living Toronto space, I have to mention my late friend Sandra Carpenter, who was my mentor, somebody that I learned so much from about the independent living movement and philosophy. And we shared learnings around intersectionality and where we needed to go forward. So where we are today is we have made great stride. We have the legislation, and that brought us forward to needing to address so many inequities in our society. I mean, that not just the legislation, but the legislation was the result of wanting to remedy so many inequities in our society under human rights. People with disabilities still lack access to affordable and accessible housing, accessible transportation, employment, education, healthcare, so on and so forth. And all of these are social determinants of poverty. And all of these are social determinants of health. If people are not healthy, they cannot access employment, education, and all that other stuff to fully participate in society. And if people are living in poverty, they also cannot fully participate in the other opportunities that we invest in to support them, including accessible transportation and employment. So people with disabilities in this country lived in deep poverty prior to the pandemic. That poverty deepened during the pandemic. Over 22% of Canadians live with disabilities. And as of last week, we know that that has risen to 27%, 5% increase in the population of people with disabilities in this country. Excuse me. People with, and we know that some of that has to do with COVID, and some of that has to do with climate change and the environment, and wildfires, and other natural disasters and floods and war. War causes disablement, let's not forget. We said that we would never forget, and yet we continue to forget. People with disabilities today are living in deeper poverty than ever before, with the state of our economy, with the cost of food rising. 4 in 10 people living in poverty are disabled. 50% of people facing food insecurity are disabled. These are real numbers. And these numbers are rising if we're seeing a rise in the number of people who are disabled. We have the Accessible Canada Act. We have a promise that the Prime Minister made in 2020 of a Canada Disability Benefit. We worked hard mobilizing nationally and locally as individuals and as organizations and as allies and supporters in the human services sector, in the disability sector, in the broader public sector, to bring about the bill that did become law this June. The Canada Disability Benefit Act is law now. However, it's not over. In fact, the harder work has begun. We had a cabinet shuffle. We have a new minister that we need to inform and empower to move quickly on regulating the Canada Disability Benefit. We have a finance minister that we need to influence to do right by disabled people. We have a government that we believe has had the best interest of Canadians at heart, because they did rise up and open up the coffers to flow money to Canadians in 2020. We know that we're making advances through the Liberal NDP agreement in a national dental care program. They also want to see a national pharmacare program. However, the Canada Disability Benefit is law, and we need to expedite it to get money to the people who need it most. So we've been building this movement and have been reaching out to people to participate in this movement. And every time there's a step, we leap and do more to make sure that we can expedite the steps that need to happen in order to get money flowing to people with disabilities living in poverty. So we launched our Shape the CDB consultation process, because we know the government consultation process is not going to reach enough people and is quite complicated for people to participate in. We have surveyed over 4,500 people. Over 4,500 people answered our questionnaire. 75 questions, 90% of them actually answered all 75 questions. We reached disabled people from all walks of life. Majority of respondents were people with disabilities, over 86% of them. Some were disabled people who are also caregivers, and some were caregivers alone. From racialized communities, from queer communities, from Indigenous communities, from rural and remote communities, people who have been formerly incarcerated or currently are incarcerated or institutionalized, newcomers and refugees, people from all walks of life, French and English speaking, ASL and LSQ users from across this country have spoken, have given input to our 7 principles around who should be eligible for this benefit, how much should the benefit be, how should they be able to access it, what defines the level of poverty to qualify for this benefit. How often should people get this benefit? All these questions and more were incorporated in this consultation, and people with disabilities have responded. We are continuing to have more conversations with those who couldn't do online surveys and or who couldn't do the online questionnaire. We are going to have peer-to-peer conversations this month, and then we are going to take all the knowledge attained, bring it together, and push it back out to people who want to stay in contact to tell us, is this correct? Is there something missing? What else needs to be added? And we will come out with a report. We have been meeting with bureaucrats and government and have talked to them, saying disabled people want to have their say, and they are having their say through our initiative. And we want to provide this in good faith to the system to incorporate it into the regulations, policies, procedures, and guidelines that need to be in place in order for money to reach people. So this,
Rabia, it's
Yep.
John Massa. We have 1 minute.
Perfect. So this is where we are at. We are asking people to continue doing the hard work that needs to be done by sharing your journeys, sharing your stories, writing to your MPs, going out to holiday parties and events in the community and talking to your elected officials. In Ontario, we need to continue coming together to make sure that this provincial government cooperates with the federal government to make sure that we lift disabled people out of poverty. This is a big part of my work and focus these days, alongside spotlighting racialized people with disabilities and their unique needs from an intersectional perspective. Please check out disabilitywithoutpoverty.ca, deansupportservices.ca, and Race and Disability Canada. Stay tuned for more in the new year to come. We cannot do this work alone. We need the independent living movement, people who worked in the past and continue to run independent living centers and support independent living movement ongoing, to work with us so that we build a better future for disabled people living in poverty tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rabia. Look forward to the Q&A section for the panel. I'm going to introduce our next speakers. I'll take you off video and
I've done it, John.
okay. And I'll introduce our next speakers, Kim Adlard and David Myers, who will be speaking on behalf of the GTA Disability Coalition. Is a network of disability-focused organizations that advances access and inclusion and voices of disabled and deaf people across the GTA. The coalition mainly engages with the Toronto City Council, city divisions, and the provinces at times, as well as with community sector groups to deliver systems change solutions to key disability issues. Key priorities areas include disability poverty, housing, and transit. And I'll pass it to Kim. You have roughly 8 to 10 minutes, Kim.
Okay. Well, I'm 4, but David's sharing the presentation with me. So I'm just going to wait until Rayhan starts our slides for us. Wonderful. Thank you, Rayhan. So, sorry, everyone. So hello, my name is Kim Adlard, and I'm the coordinator of the GTA Disability Coalition. So just a bit of an image description to offer. I'm a white, mid-aged cis woman with critical health disabilities. I have short, very graying dark hair. I'm wearing black frame glasses, a blue and green Scotch plaid button shirt underneath a black t-shirt. I use she, they pronouns. Yeah, so I'm very pleased to be presenting today with my colleague David Myers. David is SILT Senior Manager of Independent Living programs at SILT, and also our coalition's lead. Before I begin, I just want to send out a massive thank you to Lisa and Rabia for joining us today. You've really elevated our event today, and I feel completely honored to share the space with you. So just a little bit about our coalition. John has already shared a bit of information. So the coalition was initially formed in 2018 through SILT and several other disability organizations here in Toronto as a way to mobilize across disability response to issues facing deaf and disabled people. We mainly focus on influencing municipal level change, but also engage in other advocacy work such as provincial and federal legislation, such as the work Rabia has just spoken about. We do this work with great appreciation of support from United Way Greater Toronto, as well as from our partner SILT. So next slide, please. So our steering committee partners currently are the Accessible Housing Network, Alliance for Quality of Blind Canadians, Toronto chapter, Autistics for Autistics, Balance for Blind Adults, Canadian National Institute for the Blind, Centre for Independent Living in Toronto, Ecohesion, Empowerment Council, Ethno-Racial People with Disabilities Coalition of Ontario, ODSP Action Coalition, the Ontario Disability Coalition, Silent Voice Canada, and Working for Change. We are very grateful to our partners for the work they do to advance access and inclusion across our communities. So next slide, please. So right now, our current community action projects consist of our Access Animator program, as well as our Call to Action video project. And both of these projects tie into the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. So for Access Animator program, Access Animators are members of various different disability communities. They engage in civic campaigns that mobilize policy change. Their work is aligned with the coalition's priority areas, and they're expanding their knowledge of anti-ableism and disability justice while developing their peer leadership and civic engagement skills. So for our Access Animator, for our Call to Action video project, we are currently working on 3 short video Call to Action videos featuring deaf and disabled community members speaking as change agents. Our participants call on the City of Toronto, the province, and elected officials to take specific bold actions. This timing is particularly critical right now as Toronto has begun their city budget process for 2024. So we aim to release our videos shortly to be able to send some messaging to city councilors and our new Mayor Chow. So videos will also be used to build allyship across our communities and including non-disability community organizations. Next slide, please. So here we are in action. So these photos, I have 6 photos up on a slide, and they are various photos of, we had 3 or 4 filming days, I believe. So these are our filming day photos featuring our crew. We have Alexa Hickox as our videographer and various participants as our cast. So we're very proud of our project and we're in the editing phase right now. So definitely stay tuned for our call to action video project launch, and we will definitely let everyone know here today when that is. So we'd love for you to come out to that virtually, of course. So that's it for me. I'm going to pass it over to David now. Thank you.
We roughly have about 3 minutes, Dave.
3 minutes?
3 to 4 minutes, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna have to do a real quick and dirty version of the 6 minutes. Anyway, hi everyone. I'm David Myers. I'm a Black cisgendered man with a disability, and I'm honored to be here with you, marking this important day. I wanted, before I got into my short presentation, to give a shout out to our United Way agency rep, Jody Shukla, who's in the room. Thank you for being here. It's thanks to United Way, actually, that we received funding for the GTA Disability Coalition, which is funded by the United Way generously, and we're happy to be the lead. So just wanted to give that shout out to the United Way before getting into it. That said, GTA Disability Coalition's priority of addressing disability poverty links directly to the UN's SDG of no poverty. As we all know, disability poverty is high and rising in Toronto for many reasons, including unlivable social assistance rates, unemployment, skyrocketing inflation, rents, and housing prices. Now, although disabled and deaf residents are over 22% of our population, Rabia just said 27 or 28, all levels of government have abandoned our community to combat this crisis on our own, really treating disabled lives as disposable. During over 10 years of austerity budgeting, the city deeply underfunded its poverty reduction strategy, and both the Ontario and federal governments failed to deliver disability incomes or temporary income relief programs that met the needs of our community, even during these disabling pandemic years. As we all know, this harmed our community, and more so disabled, Indigenous, Black, Brown, and gender diverse folks. Examples of our community's vulnerability abound. The city's own data shows disabled people is among the largest client groups for its rental subsidies and tenant support programs. In 2023, we saw a spike in applications for medical assistance in dying or MAID, with disability poverty cited as a major driver in many, with our community crying out that we're not receiving the resources needed to live and live with dignity at the same time. The coalition and our partners have campaigned for the city to justly fund the annual poverty reduction strategy, for Ontario to double unlivable ODSP rates, for the feds to deliver a Canada disability benefit that truly lifts disabled people out of poverty. We've deputed the city council, met with individual councillors advocating for their support, partnered on campaigns for an affordable, fair city during the last city elections, and the annual budgeting process, and spoken at town halls and rallies over the past year, and also spoken in the media about this issue. And then we'll move on to housing and shelter now. All of us here are concerned about Toronto's worsening housing crisis and the homelessness emergency, which has disproportionately harmed disabled city citizens. Yet, our community has been largely invisible in the city's 10-year housing plan, despite being doubly disadvantaged by both housing, affordability, and accessibility crises. With respect to housing, Toronto is on track to miss the UN's SDG 2030 goal by decades, unless it takes bold action starting now and over the next 7 years. And meanwhile, Canada's and Ontario's multi-billion-dollar housing programs have shut the door on disabled people. Neither have targets that will move the needle on accessible or affordable housing in the short term. And the coalition's done a lot of campaigning around this issue. We've called on the city to, moving forward, build and invest in housing that has 100% units built with universal design, or as close as possible to 100%. And we've endorsed the Accessible Housing Network's Accessible Housing Pledge. And then on to transit. And I'll just be brief on this one, given no time. That's our third priority as a coalition. And again, equitable transit speaks to one of the UN's SDG goals of building sustainable cities by 2030. Most of us here know that conventional TTC is largely inaccessible and unaffordable for many people with a wide range of disabilities. Yet in recent years, Wheel-Trans has been reassessing its ridership, with many customers being placed on what's called their Family of Service program. We've had tons of stories of people with disabilities, as well as speaking in the media, talking about being forced to navigate Wheel-Trans rides, along with subways or buses to get from one destination to the other, exposing them to unsafe and inaccessible travel. The coalition's treated this as a justice disability issue. And throughout 2023, we partnered with TTC Riders, Social Planning Toronto, and other partners to speak out at council committees, press conferences, with the media to actually shine the spotlight on this injustice. And we've called on the TTC to pause the Family of Service program while there's been a conducted transparent consultation process, and while this reassessment process is reviewed, to kind of stop what's happening at this point and get some more transparency. That's the end of my presentation. And then I'll just speak to how to get in touch with us as a coalition. On slide 9, please. Our socials, you can join us. We have a Facebook page, www.facebook.com/GTADC1. We're on Twitter very actively, twitter.com/GTADC1. And you can reach both Kim or myself for the coalition at kim.adler@silt.ca and david.myers@silt.ca. Thanks so much for being here, everyone.
Thank you,
That's
David.
it for me.
We could stop sharing the screen. And I just want to say that before we go to the Q&A, a copy of this presentation will be sent to everyone, as well as a 2-page resource of all the community organizations, as well as the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, as well as an anonymous evaluation for people to fill out. So I asked Rehan, we can stop recording